And welcome again, as Anka and Bukesh had said. And today we're focusing on bold change at a global level. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce Alexandre Lemille to share with us his work on and research on Be Bold for Real, the Circular Humansphere, and challenge us all to be bold change leaders. Alexandre advocates and leads discussions on the circular human sphere, or how humans can play new roles and functions in a symbiotic approach within our ecosystem. A lecturer, writer, and advisor, Alexandre is a systems thinker in human prosperity. He lectures at several universities around the world and holds an MBA from Hult International Business School in Boston in the US. And after Alexandre's presentation, we will have time for a Q&A discussion. So please enter your questions in the chat line below the screen. So bienvenue Alexandre encore, and welcome and thank you so much. We're really looking forward to learning so much from you this evening.
Thanks, Bridget. Thank you for having me today at the Future Living conference. It would be my pleasure to introduce you to the concept of the circular human sphere. So as Bridget was saying very loud and clearly, this is an invitation to reconsider our role and function. So basically, why are we here and what are we here for within the next model, the next life model, not necessarily just economic model, but maybe more than that, into a regenerative life model where we would preserve the conditions conducive to life, a little bit like what we are saying in the biomimicry space, but applicable for human as well. So that's the idea behind the circular humans. So tell me, because we had some issues in the... Tell me if you see the second slide while I talk. So here in that second slide, which is an animated slide, you will see where we believe this is all going. I mean, we've started with the left bottom corner with the concept of linear economy, and that started with the first industrial revolution, where only economics matter, but we were using a lot. I mean, we're still using, because we are still in this linear economy, and we are hopefully leaving the linear economy very soon. And that linear economy, which is based on extractive activities as well as throwing out activities like wasting everything that we use, whether it's flows of energies or flow of matter. And this is a very fragmented, very technology-oriented concept and belief system where we use a lot of energy. Then in the center of this graph, we are currently moving towards a circular economy. So a circular economy where extractive activities and throwing out activities will hopefully disappear, to be obviously replaced by new economic activities, but economics here are still very much essential. What the linear economy, what the circular economy, will help us out is to move beyond that sustainable neutral line, whereby we will shift towards a model whereby we will restore and protect not only the ecosystems, the environment, but as well as the goods and the services. The goods will be made durable, and hopefully we will lead to more well-being for everyone into whole system understanding. But that's not the end of the story, because soon thereafter we might and hopefully be moving into further regenerative thinking and beyond just the economic model, whereby we are no longer just consumers and users of another economic model, but completely, human circular beings, as I like to call them, whereby we are fully part of the ecosystem, and we are symbiotic beings ourselves. And here, the systemic rules take over again. I say again because they used to be leading the planet rules, but not anymore. So the regenerative life models would be where humans are completely in symbiosis with their own design. And then you see this spiraling or cyclical effect here, whereby we will move from degenerative systems where we are currently, and we are hopefully leaving this phase of degenerating system in the bottom left corner of my screen, into this regenerative system effect, where in the top right corner of the screen, into more symbiotic and valued societies, where we will be caring for all species among other species, the human beings. And then you see as well here the circular economy, which is a key topic today, will help us move away from recycling and consuming societies that we have experienced throughout the linear economy into more restorative and inclusive society. So in this one single graph, you have basically a lot of information, and we can talk about it further, but we don't have much time today, but I invite you to study this graph a bit further. So when you think about these economic models, and when you think about what's happening within the planetary systems, if you look at the planetary systems itself, not just an exit pathway towards the moon or Mars, but saying, no, we have the most beautiful planet on Earth, and we need to care for it. Therefore, you understand that even though we move into a new economic model, we might face what we call an economic consumption rebound, whereby if you save materials, if you spend less into buying goods and moving into accessing goods or accessing as a service, obviously you might be spending less of your purchasing power into this kind of new solutions. But then the money that is spare, that is left on the side, might be spent into something else, and that's what we call the consumption rebound. And this is what's behind it is also what we call greed. And unless we pause and ask ourselves, what are we here for? Who are we? What could be our roles and function into a next model? Call it circular, call it cyclical, spiral, or else. We need to rethink about who we are and what we are here for. And that's the invitation that the Humansphere is offering. And I will explain these 5 strategies that you see here, that we believe, we strive, we care, and we adapt, in a minute. And here we have what we call the axis of abundance, where we consider ourselves as being nature. We consider ourselves as being endless distributive energy, endless empathy with the heart here, and the little dots here on top of the head, endless stock of knowledge, which is the first stock that you need to preserve from a quality standpoint. On the right-hand side of the human sphere, you have what we call the technosphere, where these are the goods and services that are flying around and that you need to preserve because we are running out of these stocks of goods and components that makes all those products that grant us access to a certain level of living and being. And then on the left-hand side, you have the biosphere. And the biosphere is often less discussed when we talk circular economy or when we talk new economic model. But that's where the regenerative models are. That's in circular economy, for instance, we look at natural cycles and we follow the rules of natural cycles. And these rules are coming from the biosphere. And the biosphere is the future, is where it's the sphere that needs to grow. among the three spheres, the sphere that needs to grow is the biosphere. The rest needs to be maintained, the others needs to be maintained or preserved or protected when it comes to the human sphere. But the biosphere is our link to life. So unless we preserve the biosphere and the ecosystem and the condition, we will not be able to preserve the conditions conducive to life. So the common denominator behind the human sphere is preserving life. So it's all about how do we solve the equation of life. And to solve the equation of life, we need to rethink about our roles and functions. Our roles towards the technosphere, what needs to be done to preserve the technosphere so that we live a decent life, and all of us. And on the left-hand side, what are our functions in order to, I was about to say disappear within the biosphere, but that's exactly that. Not leaving any footprints behind once we move into other life, be it for product or be it for human beings. So it's also part, they are also a part of the human sphere which is spiritual and trying to understand, can we think differently? Can we have different belief? Because as a leader of a company, as a head of a family, whoever, the mother, the father, that driving this family towards better days, we need to understand whether our belief system is right, and we need to understand whether it's where we are within that wider system. And behind that, we see two parts. The technosphere side, so all the metals and non-metals elements that are our technical nutrients, they are running out. And that's why the circular economy is a very, well thought of, and everybody is in the ecosystem, in the economic sphere, is looking at the circular economy, because we are running out of supplies, circular supplies to feed our factories, because these are based on scarcity. Obviously, we want to move away from scarcity, looking outside the planetary systems to look for new sources of elements. But within the planetary systems, we are running out of these elements. So we can dig further, but the answer to digging further, more CO2 emissions. So to preserve the technosphere, we need to increase the prices of those elements, so that we design modular products so that we recover these elements later on. And then on the left-hand side, the biosphere and the human sphere, which is part of the biosphere, because we are nature. It's based on the abundance, the rules of abundance. There are plenty of humans, and there are plenty of natural systems that keeps regenerating itself. And when you look at the humans, you look at this axis of abundance. In fact, from an empathy point of view, from an energy point of view, the circular and natural beings ourselves, and the fact that we grow our knowledge bank every day, these represents your axis of abundance. And this is where we will move from a model of having, which is the economic model today, into a model of being. And we will see how we will achieve that. First of all, one of the main strategy here is we care. Basically, it's how are we going to create an economic model here which value everything, so all the technical nutrients, so all these components to build the products of tomorrow, and how we will value everybody. That's the piece that we often miss, is that unless we value everybody, unless we design an economy which is based on human needs, not on selling more, you will fail moving into, slowing down the effect of climate change and slowing down the effect of biodiversity loss, because you are not accountable for everybody. Everybody says, "That's it for me." Why is it the concentration? We need to design something from, maybe not for blank bits, but an economic model value everybody. And to not just focus on those who understand circular economy more. This kind of loop here is the recycling loop. The next one towards the smaller loops is the remanufacturing and refurbishing loop, then redistribution, repair and maintain. And unless we force these effects towards more repair, more maintenance of products, and more shareable products into services, we will not value and protect not only human beings, but also the products that are circulating further within the economic model. So the more we go to a smaller loop here, the more we will value and protect not only products, but humans, because we will be relying more on human energy in a local, from a local standpoint or biological region standpoint, because the products will be accessible for all to repair, to maintain, to enhance. And the less we will be relying on a centralized, heavy lifting energy model based on food. An example is your standard smartphone, which is not repairable or can be repaired by a robot. In fact, there is no leakages. There are no leakages, economic leakages into the local ecosystem, i.e., your region, your country, because it's very limited job being created, and the components that are part of these devices are going back to the factory of the manufacturers, and therefore there is no opportunity to develop a healthy ecosystem, i.e. Germany, France, the UK, you name it. Whereas the other side, and I will try to move the little icon here, oops. On the other side, what we call the open approach, the open circular approach, or type 2. You are here with a modular, repairable, and evolving smartphone, whereby, and these arrows are that I've not explained, but basically the arrows are your recycling, remanufacturing, refurbishing, redistributing, and repairing arrows. They basically, when you provide millions of units of a device that is modular, like a smartphone, and now there is also a personal computer which is modular, you create healthy conditions for the local ecosystem or the national ecosystems, so the local region or the country. And what we've seen lately is that, like in my country, France, there's been an introduction of the repairability indices, and thanks to the repairability indices, we are now able to see a shift from these companies where the phones are not repairable, and towards a more movement towards a more healthier ecosystem, because these companies that are keeping all the components within the phone are now providing, because of the repairability index, repairability guides, availability of spare parts, and so on. Okay, the experience is only back since the 1st of January of this year, but we see this kind of effect happening today once you insert a repairability index into your market. Now, the REACT strategy is it's a difficult one to understand, because it's about changing and adapting human functions so that we become symbiotic or circular beings, i.e. we are part of the ecosystems. We help ecosystem functions to grow, and we slow down the rate of our huge footprint by adapting ourselves to the ecosystem rules, and not the contrary, not imposing the human rules to the ecosystem. And when we adapt, basically we disappear within the biosphere. An example that I often use is the Dynamical example, which is basically in your country, by the way. So it's in Berlin, and they invite families. Usually it's a club of 100 families that gather together, and that club, within that club, they are being offered biodegradable diapers for free. So when you're a young couple, having diapers for free is something invaluable. So the diaper are fully biodegradable, made of organic components, elements, and basically the baby does what he has to do or she has to do, and by using the diaper, the used diaper is being dropped in a central point in Berlin, and basically it enters into a fermentation process that is organized by Daikel. And throughout the fermentation process, they are generating what we call terra preta. Terra preta is a humus of human origin. And when we looked at a few years back, when we look at the soils of the Amazonia forest, we found out that the soils were full of terra preta. So the ancient tribes, the indigenous tribes, used to do terra preta, and possibly this is one of the reasons why the Amazonia forest is so tropical and so dense, because the soils were prepared thanks to human activity. So here you see the system dynamics between the humans and the ecosystems where they are fully aligned. So using this very rich humus, you can plant fruit trees and other fruits and plants, selling those fruits, turning those fruits into baby jars, juices and jellies and teas. The mother eating and those juices, drinking those juices and eating those jellies and drinking those teas, making babies, the babies making the poos being turned into terra preta, and here you are disappearing in the ecosystem rules. So this is how we could adapt ourselves within the ecosystem. In We Thrive is the strategy which represents the feedback loop from a well-designed economic model. So humans will thrive as long as they adapt deeply within the ecosystem rules, and as long as they care deeply within their economic model of life. So basically, the more we care for all humans, the more we care for all products, the more we adapt within the ecosystemic rules, the more well-being and the more thriving models of life and economic models will be happening. An example which I work on currently is the city of Roubaix in northern France, which is one of the poorest cities in France. We are in Europe, but the inhabitants of Roubaix are quite poor, and they have been invited to live a life at zero waste. And basically, 6 years ago, they were given tools like weight to weigh their bins, composting systems and vermicomposting systems for their balconies. They've been granted access to shared gardens to grow vegetables and fruits, and they've been provided with workshops to learn how to live a life at zero waste. And here you see on the picture how to make products, daycare or washing products and so on, by themselves. And basically the inhabitants, the cities, were sharing their tricks about how to make product by themselves and how to access better products like better fruits and better vegetables without any harmful element within it. And what we are looking at these days is that there might be a correlation between living a life at zero waste and visiting a very tense situation, like from a financial standpoint. Living a life at zero waste costs less money. From a health standpoint, I mean, accessing shared garden and balcony systems where to grow fruits and vegetables improve improve the health of the people, as well as the fact that you have a shared garden or the fact that you grow your own vegetables. Maybe you have excess of fruits and vegetables, therefore you share them with your neighbors, and there are more social inclusiveness within the communities of the people of Roubaix. So This is happening as we speak, but it seems that this correlation between a life at zero waste and improved well-being is happening. So not to say a circular life, not to say a life where a human sphere could ask some questions about existence. One of the last strategy for today is we monitor. So this is at the systemic planetary system level. So obviously it's about the experts in climate change, the experts in system dynamics. So it's kind of dashboard that needs to be used by the leaders of today in order to understand the feedback loop of what's happening within the biosphere and how much we adapt ourselves to the biosphere rules, so that the feedback loops, maybe not today, but later on, will slow down its pace towards a more destructive system. So we monitor is, as leaders, we are part of the chain of maintaining life systems, and as leaders, we will need to understand where this is all going. So one of the famous model is obviously the donut economy, and I know some of you are experts in the donut economy. So how do we stay within that light green system, donut, basically? And maybe by rethinking and by keeping in mind these 5 strategies, hopefully we will be able to stay within, to go back within that safe and space, because we are not there yet. But other model could be SDGs, but question mark on SDGs, because there are a lot of linear concepts within SDGs which are a bit limitative. And then the last strategy to keep in mind, not only again as a human being, as citizen, but also as leaders of companies, is we believe. And this is the most difficult one, because it's about understanding where we are within the system. Why we live those lives that we live, and where we are, and how can we help preserve the life of future generations. And this is the trickiest one and the most difficult one, because it's about full system consciousness. It's about understanding how the actions and activities and the roles and functions that I will be having during my lifetime will preserve future generations. And this is again, if you reach out to this kind of system that you believe during your lifetime you have preserved the lives of your children as well as your grandchildren and great-grandchildren, like indigenous peoples are doing, and it's been studied more and more that indigenous people in some part of the world understand that, have been applying those rules as being one human, one species among other species. And they have been preserving and protecting themselves against past colonial behaviors, and still against power distance and power differences that we still see today in a world which is more and more inequitable. So looking at how indigenous people think about themselves and decide, and this is called the decentration, or how do we decenter ourselves? So it's in complete opposition to greed, or complete opposition to individualistic systems whereby we think about ourselves. So it's really decentering ourselves is about deciding whether the big decisions I'm going to make during my lifetime will preserve future generation. And we are talking here about long-term decision models. So, in summary, this is it for today. We have these 5 strategies here. And these 5 strategies, the best way as a leader to implement them is to understand how far we are from those strategies. So it's a system, it's a measurement system that we use when we do impact assessment. How far are we from full system consciousness? How am I and is our company to preserving future generations? How far are we to valuing everyone and everything within the economic system? How far are we to deep adaptation? Okay, how can I deeply adapt to the ecosystem which belong to? Therefore, if I understand how far I am from today, 2021, to reaching out to that level, to reaching out to the level of valuing everyone and everything, hopefully I will be advancing humanity towards the proper or the right direction, whichever the meaning of right direction is here. And how far are we? This is more complex, obviously, because we need experts here to system cyclicality or circularity. And this is a bit of your dashboard to preserve systems conducive to life. That's what the work of the Humansphere is all about, is to say, okay, we are moving towards new economic model. But how about to pause ourselves for a minute and say, what am I here for, and what can I do to preserve systems conducive to life? I don't know if you have any questions, but I'm available for some questions if there are any. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Alexandre. That was really both thought-provoking and inspirational. And I have a lot of questions. I'm going to check if there are some in the chat as well. But maybe while we're waiting for... There's one here from Charlotte. I'll start with that, and then I have some others to go. And it is, how do we measure or quantify this value? You said the place we start is, you know, how far are we from where we want to be? So how do we go about addressing where we want to be, where we are now, and how we quantify that value?
In fact, as a leader of a company or an organization, private or public, you don't have all the keys to measure all of that, and I don't have. It's a matter of sitting together and saying, okay, how can we measure those? I came up with some indicators, five main indicators for each strategies, which I'm happy to share anytime. But basically, it's a mix of long-term indicators outside of the scope of the company or the public or private organization's scope. So it's a mix of expertise, indicators and data coming from world experts, together with national data as well as local data, as well as the organization data, and saying, okay, we are within that system. We need to apply some indicators, and usually indicators are short-term, long-term, medium-term, long-term. So you start from the end saying, okay, by 2050, if we need to be aligned with ecosystemic rules, or if we need to be aligned with the regions, the bio regions, so that I preserve the systems which I depend on as an organization. You start from the end and you apply indicators and you understand what kind of outcomes needs to happen over the long term, the medium term, and the short term. This is called backcasting, or this is called the theory of change, or you name it. But basically, it's an exercise. We ask a lot to organization. We ask materiality assessment. We ask all kinds of raison d'être and all kinds of systems. But today we need to go a bit beyond that, because organizations are part of that chain that maintains living systems, and we need to understand how we can go towards this world which will be preserving those living systems. So it's a backcasting exercise with this dashboard in mind, saying, where can I get this data? Some data are publicly available, but it's an exercise which is based on outcomes, and these outcomes are measured based on indicators, quantitative and qualitative indicators.
Okay, Charlotte, I think that was quite a comprehensive answer to your question. A question that I have is that you said, okay, we have to say to work out how far we are, but I think some people haven't even got to that stage yet. So mindset change, and you're proposing a really radical mindset change, which fits within the bold change thing here, but mindset change is a process and a long journey. So where best to start at a personal level, and then also on society for educating children, because personally I'm very positive about the youth and the questions I have with a lot of very young people, but it's not widespread. So where do you suggest we start as an individual and then as a society to make this mindset change?
As an individual, as a society, and as leaders of companies, I mean, it's a matter of keeping those two dimensions in mind. The extra long-term one, not long-term, extra long-term, beyond my life, beyond death and birth and death. Will I make leave a footprint behind me, a negative one or a positive one, and how can I make sure that the world I know at birth is better when I leave this world, or when I come back in a regenerated form. So it's a difficult one. It's an existential one. It's one that we see in some societies, in some ancient communities. So this decentration system, or decentering ourselves, like I make decision not for me but for the others, is seen in the ecosystem, how the ecosystem work. Like a tree doesn't feed itself, it feeds everything else but itself, or it feeds itself as well, but it doesn't need all the energy and food that it produces. So it's exactly the same. It's and some people, some communities in this world have understood that, and it seems to be one of the best strategies to preserve living systems in this planet. So long-term view, and then short-term view. What can I do tomorrow? When you are in an organization, it's basically, instead of focusing on volumes of sales and volumes of production, and you can look laterally into symbiotic opportunities. So basically, how the things are flowing, stocks of materials and flows of energies are flowing, so that I can connect different activities to my organization. My organization generates electricity and energies. How am I using the entire flows of energies, heat, and you name it, gas, and you name it? Or can I share it in a symbiotic format, as we see in industrial symbiosis? The same applies for societies. I mean, we live in houses that are full of energies and materials. Maybe there are ways to make it modular, to make it accessible, to share access to gardens, to rooms, to you name it. I mean, we see this economy being put in place, but obviously the issue of this, what we call de-Uberization of the economy, is that we applied shared economy rules with linear mindset. So it doesn't work, but we are getting there. We are moving towards that. So it's about empathy, it's about sharing, granting access, making things modular and repairable. Once you make things modular and repairable, once you understand that all the objects around you and the people around you are knowledgeable in order to repair the goods and the services around your village, around your city, and everything is available nearby you, you are growing the resilience of the system you belong to.
Okay, thank you very much. You mentioned earlier that knowledge is one of our first assets, or most important assets to preserve and to grow. Could you elaborate a bit further on that and maybe give some best in class examples of where that's working really well?
Knowledge is the most important of all the stocks. Yeah, from a circular standpoint, or all the new economic model that you see popping around, it's about preserving knowledge. The highest quality of your stock, the better. So it can be stock of metals or non-metals. It can be natural stock, but at the end of the day, you realize that it's the quality of your own knowledge as an individual, part of an individual. Sorry, I'm talking French here. Part of a wider community that makes sure that you are not taking the wrong decisions, the wrong decision over the long term or the wrong decisions on the short term. So that's really key. So if you as a nation, as a bioregion, or as a community of communities, you say we will preserve our knowledge to the highest quality, you understand everything. Example, I don't know, I was not prepared for that question, but an example I will tell you, one that comes to my mind right now. In Japan, although there is no need to dismantle ancient temples, all these beautiful Asian, Japanese temples, they make sure that artisans dismantle piece by piece temples every 10 years, so that they don't forget the knowledge on how they built those temples centuries ago. So we could be the same for the pyramids, or I don't know, you name it.
Yeah, they do that
that's
quite
an example of cultural and knowledge that shouldn't be lost. And we saw, I mean, in my country with Notre Dame, we have no clue how to rebuild Notre Dame as it used to be in the Moyen Age or Middle Age. So that's one example. We don't know. So we rebuild it according to 2021 rules, but these are not the same.
It's the same. I'm fascinated by the dome in Florence as well. We're still, even with all our modern technology, we're still not able to replicate how they built that. And I find that totally fascinating. And it's the same in the UK. They're trying to relearn how to grow all the plants and vegetables and things from the Victorian age. And it's such a shame that we've lost all those crafts and all that know-how. There's a really interesting question from Stefan Frank, and I will read it out. I very much appreciate the model of need to rethink, redefine own role in the biosphere. What would you consider the most effective ways to start that kind of thinking? Upbringing, education, school, philosophy or religion? Or is it something that people grow into along their life experiences, or something else completely different?
Or is it something that people
grow into, you acquire with life experience, that you learn basically as you live through life? Or is it something else?
I think it's all of the above and other things as well. Look, again, I need to be very humble, and I'm not expert in everything. We need all the expertise, we need all the knowledge, we need all the expert from philosophy, from living system, biologists, physicists. I mean, everybody is needed to understand how can we live according to ecosystemic rules. And there is always a beautiful example to me, but that can be scary to a lot of people, especially in Europe or America, is that these ladies they are ladies because they have smaller fingers than men. The ladies in the Sichuan region in the central China, there is no bees anymore. Okay, so what do? We stop growing fruit trees, or we find new ways of replacing the bees until such time the bees are coming back. Obviously, I'm not saying we replace the bees and full stop. And in fact, they have mimicked the behavior of the bees, and they are using the flowers to pollinize, to do pollination of the fruit trees, to grow fruits for the community and to continue living. So they are hand pollinating the fruit trees. Obviously, this could be scary for some people, but that's the situation. There is no more bees. What do we do? And we grow back bees communities, but until such time, humans are developing new functions to repair the environmental functions that went missing. And they've learned about it, and the way they think in China enable them potentially to adapt to that kind of thinking and to that kind of function. I'm not saying we will create this kind of functions in Germany or in France or wherever, but that's an example. That's possibly, potentially, from the history, from the experience, from the gathering of different people together as a community, from the belief system, from the way you have adapted, from the way you've been educated, from the exposure of life. So all of the above, Stefan.
Thank you so much. May I add on that a little bit more and just ask about the education, maybe at a young age already, and then right through the system, right up to MBA schools or whatever. Have you any thoughts on how that should be improved to think more, to aid this mindset change and rethinking our own role in the biosphere?
I know only a handful of countries that teaches system dynamics, ecology, climate change to pupils. I think it's in Finland or Sweden for years and years now, but it's not happening elsewhere. So that's to me hugely, or into alternative schools as well. But that's to me, a huge gap. I mean, we should from the birth be one species among other species and understand the wider system. We live in concrete towns and we have no clue of what we call nature, because we call it nature as a separation to humans, because we believe we are above and beyond nature. That's why I don't use that word. I use ecosystems or biosphere. So we need to be humble again and to teach those kids ASAP about how systems dynamics work and system thinking, design thinking, and all these biomimicry, learning from nature, mimicking nature, how things work. Otherwise, we might be completely detached, and this is what's happening. I mean, since the Rio conference, since we rely so much on technology and heavy lifting stuff, oil-based and energy-based, fossil fuel energy-based solutions, since our belief in technology is so huge, we have run out of time because we have not taken the right decisions. And this is where we are. Instead of looking at distributed energy, I mean, Kate Raworth is explaining that very nicely within the donut. So we have all the elements today. We just need to get going. But our leaders are not following quickly enough, and democracy is very slow to respond to this kind of systemic problems and challenges. Yeah.
Great. That leads us very nicely on to another question about leadership, if you don't mind. But first, I would just like to ask you, do you think forest schools, the concept of forest schools is a step in the right direction, because children are actually part of nature and learning in nature? And now it has been proven with all this forest bathing in Japan and things that actually for us as the human being, we respond very well to the calming effect of trees and nature. So basically, what would you say, what does leadership look like from a circular humansphere perspective when we're going through this period of bold change that we all need to do now? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's leadership within a circular economy, a circular humansphere standpoint is about wecosphere. It's about we as part of a wider communities of humans and non-humans. It's about saying things that are bold enough or beyond bold, because we need beyond bold thinking. We need to step out of the pathways of belief that we have today. And leadership is, to me, having this dashboard into your mind. I mean, maybe some of those adaptation that I'm inviting people to step into seems to be far away, but as you go along, you will catch up. Some of the strategies seems to be more doable today, but the idea is to say, if you can maintain this long-term perspective, lateral perspective into symbiotic strategies, like we are part of a wider system and we need to be in symbiosis with that system, so that I need to value everything that I see around me, people and elements. I need to value the biospheric elements as well, and I need to disappear within those rules. And once you understand that, your belief system and your your consciousness will move slowly or quickly, and you will start understanding where we need to be into preserving conditions conducive to life. Obviously, all my talk, I haven't talked about money, I haven't talked about revenues or shareholders, or because we need to move beyond that. We need to create organizations that are living systems and that are interacting into benefiting local communities. And by strengthening, implementing different circles around communities, protecting them from a macro standpoint, meso and micro standpoint, you will reinforce the resilience of communities. And somehow within the circular economy or cyclical economy, it's all about relocalizing these elements of life. And by relocalizing them, I mean, we talk a lot about that in the post-COVID world, where all the factories are elsewhere but in Europe. So we need to repatriate all these activities. But we do it with a linear thinking. Okay, we need to create a factory of masks or whatever, you name it, and we need to make money. Oh, and then the next day everybody is vaccinated, and then we don't need masks anymore. So no, we need to think from a symbiotic standpoint. What does my bioregion needs? Not just my country with the frontier, with the borders between Germany and France. No. There are biological regions within Europe with forests, with valleys, and with seas, and those biological regions needs to produce what they produce best with the people's knowledge, and everything needs to interact and grow back again. And I know forests in Germany are disappearing. So what can we do to grow back again those ecosystems that are disappearing, so that people can keep well-being in their perspective, in their objectives of life. Yeah.
Great. And leading on from that, Anka has a really good question about what can we do to support our leaders and politicians to become bolder in making progress and decisions in regards to sustainability.
Thank you, Anka. I'm sure there's plenty of sustainability experts in the room to answer part of the question. One thing that I dearly wish for, which is very basic, but can lead to so much changes, and can start seeing those spiraling model getting started, because they are, for the time being, we are popping around, but the cyclicality of those models is not turning around in the right direction yet. It's a matter of legislation, setting up the right laws. I mean, like I was telling you the example of the repairability indices in France, which is a European-based test bed. So we will be happening in other countries. And all of a sudden, the producers are providing guidelines and repairability tools, and the parts are available. So magic. So by changing the rules of the game, you will see these models flowing. Another example could be, and this is led by an organization called X-Tax in the Netherlands. It's about changing the way taxation is being done, and they have come up with some models that are very much running very well for governments. Basically, they are taxing what is disappearing, so the scarcity part of the graph I was showing. If cadmium, if palladium, if I don't know, all these elements or the rare earth elements that we need into our flat screen are disappearing, or they need so much extraction activities away from our eyes in China, so that we have our flat screens. If we start taxing those elements, you will see that the products will be more and more modular, because we will be more and more able to recover those elements, because they cost more and more to the organization. So by a very simple taxation system where you tax what is disappearing, so you tax scarcity, and you remove tax on what's available, human energy at local level, then all of a sudden, you don't necessarily create a lot of more employment, but you create all kinds of different activities at a local level. So tomorrow, possibly, we will have paid activities, call it jobs or employment, and non-paid activity, but activities that reduces the cost of life. So if you, and I have a modular phone here, if you start taxing what's inside, all your phones and all your PCs and all your elements of life will be modular because accessible, because we need to get back to the stock, the mine activity. And at local level, it's human energy that you can actionate. Not necessarily to create jobs, but to create a very virtuous movement of communities that take back control on their life and are able to fix the stuff that they need to live a decent life. And by a simple taxation level system that government can implement, and they have proven that this model works, the government is still having a lot of money inflows into its bank account by taxing those resources that are disappearing and diminishing the tax on labor. So labor is less costly and resources are being recovered. So that's a very simple first move government could do.
Wow, that's really great. That's kind of returning maybe to I visit South Africa quite a bit, where I know you lecture, and there things are labor is cheap and things are very expensive, as opposed to here in Europe, especially in Switzerland where I live, where labor is incredibly expensive and you have to pay people to take things away from you sometimes. So, okay.
You know, I've been living a lot in Africa, and I always say to people in Europe, well, I live better in Africa than here. Why? Because labor is so cheap. Goods are expensive, but people are, if you don't pay for service, people will look at you saying, okay, you don't create economic activity around you, and you have people to fix for everything. And so it's a real economy of repairability. Obviously, it came from the economy of survival, but more and more it's recyclable economy, but hopefully soon repairable economy. And you see that a lot. I mean, obviously, it comes from a very difficult past. But what could be a model, a mix between a European model and an African model, could be a very interesting result. To see how people talk to each other in the streets. They tell you that there is a traffic jam in front of you, and you need to take that road and that road. So it's a very symbiotic approach. When you look from that angle, you say, okay, this is super symbiotic. People help each other. They talk to each other. They are very collaborative. The goods are maybe not working well, but the products are not working well, but there's always someone somewhere to repair them. So it's a very interesting aspect from a symbiotic point of view.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, thank you so much. I have a reminder that we've got over time. So I'd just like to thank you so much. This was such a rich discussion. And if there's one thing maybe to close, is there one closing thought or a call to action you'd like to leave us with so we can all make bold changes towards the circular human sphere?
Okay, you haven't prepared me for that as well.
So. It's okay if you don't, because you've given us a lot of information, but it's an invitation.
I mean, it's a big thought, but it's, to me, if we solve greed on this planet, we solve everything. So if we change our belief system so that we believe in regenerated life, we believe in this afterlife, not necessarily within your religion, but saying, okay, there's something wider than your existence. And if you start showing a bit of empathy, you will preserve the quality of life of your own children, because it's happening now. The climate change, we are the climate change victim. It's not our children, it's now. It's going to be worse. But if we all together, we show a bit of empathy, we open a bit of our hearts, not our wallet, I mean, we will be living in a very different world.
Great, thank you so much again, and thank you to everybody.